Darjamel, you start your book by falling through a crevasse, hanging in space, staring at ice for hours, maybe. Why? That seems like it was a great metaphor for this journey that you take us on in the book. Talk about that.
It kind of caught me by surprise, obviously, punching through a snow bridge that I didn't even know that I was on, and then falling through and all of these layers of time in the ice flying past me, and then stopping and pausing and being forced for 2 hours to sit there and look at it and think. And I feel like that's where we are now at this moment in climate disruption, where for a long time, the majority of us were just going along, completely ignorant of or not paying attention to what was happening. And then now, especially recently, the crisis is, I think, readily apparent to most people who want to see and are getting that we are in a major crisis situation here. And then really looking at and thinking about what does that mean, and starting to kind of let that all sink in. So in a way, really for me, that's what that fall represented.
Why is it so important for people to have a personal connection to the land?
I feel like the fundamental cause of climate disruption is that we've lost that connection to the land. And if we'd maintained the connection that we've always had as a species, I think we would have been aware a long time ago of what's happening and hopefully made some different decisions. And then now more than ever, in order to pay attention of what's happening and how fast it's happening and the imperative to act, that's not going to happen unless we have, I think, a deep, personal, visceral connection to the land.
And you have had that, so what are you seeing happening?
I was living in Alaska, and so hence the focus of my work on what's happening to ice and glaciers. And so going out regularly on climbing trips to glaciers and watching them recede every year dramatically. Living in Anchorage where Christmas would go by with no snow on the ground. Really, really dramatic impacts. And even big loss of ice high up on Denali, the highest peak in North America. So it was impossible not to see these dramatic changes even back in the mid-90s.
What kinds of changes are you seeing?
Right, so I wanted to go back to places that I had a long-term relationship with. Denali being the longest. The first time I was up there was 1997, and I went back 19 years later in 2016 for the book, and went up, and dramatic changes, things like, the base camp of Denali's a glacier at 7,200 feet, mosquitoes at base camp. Lightning storms up on the summit ridge at over 20,000 feet, which lightning and thunder at that elevation it's never happened before, on Denali at least. And then even dramatic loss of ice even up there, things like rock fall at 18,000 feet. So we were required to wear helmets at certain parts of the route where, there shouldn't be melting and rocks falling out at 18,000 feet on a mountain 250 miles south of the Arctic Circle.
What other kinds of places did you visit where you saw the dramatic impacts of climate change?
Another one was the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, where bleaching events are now happening every year the last few years, and we're set to have another one real soon, where the water's so warm that the coral is not able to take in the algae for its protein and its nutrients, and that algae becomes toxic, so it has to get ejected, hence the coral turns white in the coral bleaching term. And again, dramatic changes. I had dove there back in 1996, and then going back 21 years later, this was in 2017, right when a coral bleaching event started. So the level of death and destruction on the reef and the loss of fish and other marine life as well, it was really pretty difficult personally to witness that.
What about in New Mexico? We don't have giant glaciers, but there are many indications of what's happening here with climate disruption.
Huge indications. I mean, I don't need to talk to New Mexicans about wildfires and the size and the frequency and the intensity that's happening, especially over just like the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, as well as drought conditions, lack of snowpack, changing precipitation patterns, unseasonably warm temperatures, dramatic weather fluctuations, and that's why I prefer to use the term climate disruption instead of climate change, because it's a disruption in patterns. And people who've lived here for a decent amount of time, it's very apparent to see these. And I think, so the drought conditions, the wildfires, increasing beetle kills in the forest here, very, very dramatic things that are all tied to some degree or another to the changes wrought by climate disruption.
Why are the trees such a good indicator of what is happening.
They are, and I've written about this. There's some incredible scientists here in state studying this, like Craig Allen at Bandelier National Monument, and he talked about how the trees here are sort of a lab for trees around the world, and that they're already living right at these thresholds because of altitude, the arid conditions, and the temperatures, that they're right at this threshold. So any little tweak in unseasonably warm temperatures or a little bit less precipitation, they're going to immediately show these effects. And so New Mexico is very unique in that sense, that the trees are really an indicator of whatever happens here, this is what's going to be happening to forests around the planet as climate disruption intensifies.
How did that drive for you a sense of urgency about what's happening?
That's, I think, the imperative of really having this connection to the planet and watching these things happen, because it's like seeing a sick friend. You want to show up and do what you can and really be there for them, and what can I do to help? And if it's a place that you really love and care about, which is easy to do in these beautiful, magnificent places like the Great Barrier Reef or Denali or other places that are really already well underway with these dramatic impacts of climate disruption, really feeling that and feeling the emotions that come along with the loss and the potential loss of these places. I've described it as feeling like being in a hospice situation, and where, literally with the Great Barrier Reef, it is in a hospice situation. I mean, scientific studies and experts are saying it's probably not going to be there for another 10 years.
10 years?
Less than 10 years now. It's been described as being in its terminal stage, hence me using the term a hospice situation. So it's really, it's an emotional roller coaster. On the one hand, parts of it are still very beautiful and vibrant, and then swim 10 feet over here and it's a dead zone of dead coral and algae and no aquatic life. And so it's really a hard thing to be there, yet at the same time, I felt compelled to be there. Again, just like in a hospice situation, you want to be there for this person or this entity that you really care about.
You said that you used to write more out of fear and anger over the biological crisis and the changing climate. What's different now for you in your writing?
What's different after going to all these places and seeing these dramatic changes for the worse is that my heart got broken over and over again working on this book, and then also the really kind of bringing out this deeper level of care and of immediacy of what's happening, and that the time for us to be out in these places and with them and really listen closely and deeper and get a stronger message of a different way to be during this time. And then from that place, I think, is where we're going to get a clear idea of what the right action for each of us individually is. And that's only going to happen if we have a really, really deeper connection to these places.
What do you hope to achieve with your work?
For me personally, it has changed my whole way of being, of essentially, it's basically cut away all the BS of, there's no time to mess around, and how do I take care of the people in my life that I'm close to, and am I talking to them about what's really happening and really sharing all of this, and the decisions that I make going into the future are very, very coming from a very different place now, knowing the immediacy of the situation, that we're losing species now at a rate 1,000 times greater than the normal background rate of species loss to extinction. And so with things happening this fast, we don't have time to waste. I hope, I guess, with my work would be to bring that thinking into more people's lives, that it's not about what are my rights or what can I get, I, me, but I feel like personally, I and we are morally obliged to how can I be a better steward of this place that we are so lucky to be in, and my obligations to take my actions from a place of thinking of how is this going to affect future generations, because I'm morally obliged to make better decisions from that place.
Darch Maile, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks very much.